Hi everyone, I'm Airier, and today we're going to be looking at more of Text Talks Battletech, the Amaris Civil War Part 2. This is the 583rd and 9 set Hut Do B Epsilon Phi Delta episode we've done of this series, and I've also lost track as well, seriously. We're just going to jump right into the point where last time around we ended on the very apparently common phrase of, God fucking damn it, Kurita. Yeah, I've been told this is a phrase I'm going to say a lot. Not as much as some other houses, one in particular, but very often with this one. Also because most of the books are not written from their perspective, so they come off as colossal dicks. With the one exception, I've been told there is a book in their perspective that's actually pretty cool. I haven't read it. I need to, but I'm in the weird position of thinking any actual canon media is a spoiler for Tex. That's weird. I'm aware of it. I'm doing it anyways. So we're going to jump right in. You guys know the deal. Link below, original video, hit it up. And when you're done, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And tell me just how wrong I am about a few things. Because, honestly, people have been really polite and very good at explaining things. It's actually really cool to see. Yeah, courtesy on the internet. It's weird, but I like it. Otherwise, let's get started.
Fucking Kurita.
Called it.
House Kurita had been a thorn.
I'm not saying I came back to that specific
Kerensky
line for that purpose,
from the
but
start. From opposing fleet movements and supporting Amaris, at least, well, unofficially. Soon, Kurita made a proper power play. He arrived on hegemony worlds bordering his territory,
and then they started
free of Amaris' forces with what Kurita called a relief force. The Kuritan relief force was a giant...
Are you sure they're not going like peacekeeping? God, I want to say I'm surprised here, not so much on Kurita's end, but just the entire, hey, we're here to help ourselves to your territory. The funny part is, if this was happening any earlier against Amaris, it would actually be an unironically good improvement, because Amaris is such an asshole to everyone that anyone is an improvement. But we all know the real reason doing it is because, well, he's busy with this other guy we don't really want to win, because then we're going to listen to him again. So, let's just fuck everyone over.
Giant fucking army with civil servants, engineers, and bureaucrats. Essentially, Kurita was annexing territory and seeing if the general would stop him.
And the thing is,
and while Kerensky thought about slapping the shit out of him, he really couldn't fight a two-front war.
So he's going to let them win.
He publicly rebuked Kurita, pulling his forces back, and realized in the end it didn't matter anymore. He now had the forces not tied down in garrison, and at least the people of that world.
Wait. I'm sorry. I haven't seen much art for Kurita because it's not really been covered much as far as I've seen. But are they actually putting samurai helmets on the mechs? I legitimately do not know if this is incredibly stupid or incredibly cool. Both. It's both. It's definitely both. That is both amazingly awesome and stupid as all get out. Oh my god. That's actually official art. They actually officially did this. This is canon.
Even if it was awful, Kurita, katana wearing ass hats talking about honor and stuff. Kerensky couldn't afford to deal with the Kurita bullshit at this time. He was thankful he could bring his forces to fight instead of garrison duties. Realizing that Kerensky wasn't going to drop 50 megatons of Russian whoop-ass on them, the other houses soon followed suit, annexing parts of the hegemony for safekeeping humanity.
I mean, you could just tell by not just the fact that we know it's bullshit, but by the ominous tone behind it. Kerensky and all of us have probably realized the same thing. They're taking over. It's a slow invasion. Everything about the hegemony that Kerensky's trying to save is gone. And the situation is so fucked up with Amaris that, like I said earlier with Kurita, it still counts as an improvement. And if it wasn't for the fact that we all knew this is not going to work out in the long run, because they're just going to start their own succession wars and fuck everything up even harder, this would honestly be, if not the best option, it would be a better outcome than working under Amaris. Except we know they're about to fuck it up right after this.
Humanitarian reasons, or whatever bullshit they could offer for the land grab.
And again, all of them are still better than Amaris.
Front with Kerensky,
it's a very low bar.
They'd take the worlds off his hands in exchange for full support, militarily, logistically, and to some extent financially.
Oh.
When Kerensky stuck that deal with Davion, houses Liao and Steiner followed suit.
Huh. I'm actually kind of surprised here just because these are the houses most people seem to have really good opinions of. Lao, I actually haven't heard as many, not as many good things, but not as many bad things. Steiner, most people just love the memes, and I'm kind of coming around to that perspective. And Davion, I've heard they're awesome up until they're not, but mostly they're awesome, except for when they're not. Kind of surprised that they actually approached him flat out to just say, hey, we'll take these worlds off your hands. We're going to help you. Also, we'll give you actual military support, which you kind of need. I know I went on an entire rant in the previous video about how militarily, his main objective should just be to bum rush, but he's a goddamn good person in a place that doesn't need goddamn good people, but also kind of really does need goddamn good people. It's a perspective where I think they do and don't need it. Militarily, no. For any sense of human decency, yes. And I don't know where to fall on this. I kind of want to hate them because they're taking advantage of the situation, but they're also still an improvement, and they're keeping Kerensky from having to deploy all his forces in ways that will just inevitably make him lose. Which is probably the calculus the houses are using, because they don't want him to lose, because then they have to deal with Amaris. But if he wins and holds territory, then they have to deal with him, which would mean they just don't get as much free shit. It's a well thought out deal, and while it's dickish as hell, and Amaris doesn't care at this point, so he'll just say fuck it, Kerensky probably realizes this is not good in the long run. But in the short run, and hell, even the medium run, it gets him away from garrison duty. It gets him away from having to expend resources on that, which basically gets rid of Amaris' advantage of even abandoning plans and scrapping all their useful aspects, because now Kerensky's getting new supplies, and he doesn't have to spread out his forces, so he can consolidate. But the houses just feel slimy as hell doing this. I don't know what to think about this. Any other science fiction universe, book, story, take your pick, I wouldn't really be this conflicted, but I know I keep coming back to this point, but Battletech is well written. I'm pretty sure they thought through this because they've used significant aspects of history to show exactly how these types of situations go down. And they've picked and choose the ones that do fit culturally with all the different aspects. It's bugging me because I honestly don't know if this is a good or a bad thing. And I just can't make that decision, even though I know what's coming next is definitely a bad thing. Not so much in the Civil War, but in the war after it. It's complicated in a way that I'm actually respecting more, because science fiction rarely actually offers complicated situations. It's usually complicated if you don't know enough information, but here, it's just going to be complicated. No matter what you do, it's just a complicated situation that's not really good or bad. It just kind of sucks, but also not as bad as it could, but also bad as it is. See? This is why I love and or hate Battletech.
Kurita didn't, though, because Kurita is an asshole and will always be an asshole.
Yeah.
Prove me wrong. With resources now flowing into the SLDF and garrisons now free to assist in the final push toward Terra, events would soon take an interesting turn. January of 2775, Kerensky's extensive intelligence services became aware of a disturbing new development.
Oh no.
Amaris' forces would exfiltrate a world, stripping it of its resources, and then setting it alight with nukes before leaving. These...
You know, in the last episode, I was surprised when he didn't nuke worlds. And we're back to where I thought we were. Yeah. I thought I was underestimating or overestimating how evil he was. And no, apparently I was right. I was just off by a few minutes.
Worlds were abandoned and destroyed to tighten Amaris' defenses further, but also to deny staging points for Kerensky. Being that he was not a monster and genuinely gave a shit, this set Kerensky into action. Amaris in the past had used nukes defensively, like one might use a fly swatter. but it was always against the
Kerensky.
SLDF, or the SLDF, and anything near it. Nukes are nukes after all. However, at this point, Amaris was intent on creating a huge problem for Kerensky at any cost. Kerensky sent 12 Army Corps forward to immediately land on those worlds, and what he found horrified him. Amaris had turned his nukes on civilian populations. As his men evacuated worlds, they bombed cities, fields, and factories so that Kerensky would have to move in, save, and take care of an irradiated, starving population.
And this is the part I was afraid. The weird part is, when you're looking at this art, this is probably not actually from the blast radius, just because nukes don't usually leave broken structures kind of like this. Down here where the rubble's lower to the ground, yeah, but higher structures will have the biggest brunt of the blast wave because they sway. Although you could attribute it to just being really damn well built, and I'm going to do that because, in general, these structures down here are more like what you would see, maybe some of the lower buildings, but anything taller, at least with our current engineering technology, probably wouldn't do that. Artillery fire would, a lot of this, but in general, unless they're a lot more structurally developed than I thought, and which is entirely possible because he was building a fortress world, a nuke would just leave a different damage pattern.
And as a tactic, it worked. Amaris knew Kerensky's character. Amaris was playing to Kerensky's guilt over causing the casualties he had thus far. Kerensky's savior complex required him to intervene, but Kerensky did so smartly. He involved the great houses for two reasons. One, they wanted the territory and didn't care if the planet was a little roughed up. Two, Kerensky wanted them to see firsthand how fucking crazy Amaris was. They took the territory and the lesson. Amaris...
Huh. I shouldn't be surprised about this, but Kerensky just took a literal slap in the face from Amaris and turned it into propaganda against Amaris by saying, hey, these worlds that I'm going to give you that were really nice, look at how Amaris fucked them up. And now I'm going to give you a message that I don't think the people in charge will care about, but every single one of your followers who isn't an absolute monster, minus Karita, is going to be like, they fucking did what? Unfortunately, I have the sinking suspicion that for the people who survived this, who were at the top, who were monsters, it's like, huh, nukes are effective at handing over worlds. Is that the actual thought process? Here's the thing, I don't know, because it's what they did later, so the idea definitely stuck somewhere. It's just getting harder and harder to put that little thought behind me, because it's getting closer and closer to happening.
Would have zero possibility for assistance from outside, other than what he currently held. There was, however, a glimmer of good news in all this mess.
Oh, there actually is.
When Kerensky liberated Nirasaki, he found a place in a very bad way. The world was nearly ruined. SLDF forces saved what and who they could, but they found a certain place had been thoroughly ransacked by Amaris during the occupation. The Nirasaki Computers Collective had been on the forefront of artificial intelligence.
You know, I just want to say, I don't usually get chills when I see things, but between forefront of artificial intelligence and what looks like a biological mass of, this used to be a person with growths all over them and blood and fungus on the walls, and then the biological suit with armor. So it's probably one of those, we're not really trying to protect you. It's if you get shot, shoot yourself type situations, because the breach and containment's probably worse than whatever the bullet would do to you. And yes, I know what that means. Between just what he said already and what's here, I know biological warfare was one of the things Kerensky was going to get thrown at him, but this looks... I know I already mentioned the horrific aspects resembling 40K, but right now, the biological horrific aspects also are starting to resemble it. Yeah, this is kind of fucked up.
When Amaris took over the SDS and automated drone systems, he ransacked their offices, deported their lead researchers to Terra, and burned everything and everyone he couldn't take.
Yep.
However, in the depths of the facility, Dr. Catherine Glimp had years before hidden a hard drive with all the data on the SDS that Nirasaki Computers Collective had ever researched. These blueprints, schematics, and documents Proved it was possible to jam the control system used for combat command and control of the drone units and the links between them. With this information, it would be possible to fight an SDS and win, though at a cost.
Oh. Oh my. I thought we were about to get a glimmer of hope that they found a cure to something that they didn't even realize they were going to get in advance. And technically, that is also exactly what we got. It wasn't biological, which I thought this was leading to, but instead technological. I knew they had drones because people have mentioned it a lot. I didn't really know much about the AI. I know it's kind of involved later on. It's not huge. It's kind of there, but it's not really played up nearly as much as some other sci-fi universes. But the fact that they're going with the option of, yeah, we can interfere with their signals so they can't, do shit. It's basically the honest way you get rid of a drone right now. You don't actually bother shooting it down. You block its signal so it crashes. Yeah, I'm not sure that would work the same way, but still, if you can jam the signal and there's a way to do that, and they have all the ways in here, and they just got that. That is useful. Not just because they now have a way through what I'm assuming is a lot of automated defenses, but because Amaris doesn't know they have a way through a lot of automated defenses. It's actually even more valuable that he doesn't realize it than just having it on its own. Because knowing that this is something that they might have, he can prepare against it. He can just throw more bodies there, maybe some that aren't automated or self-contained, so they won't need it. But right now, he's under the assumption, this shit's tight, move on to something that isn't. So he's leaving a weakness he didn't even know he had.
Within the weeks, though, the SLDF had an edge, and soon, the war was on the road again. The closer to Terra the SLDF advanced, the worse it got. Even with the edges they had, the numbers they had, the training and experience they shared, Amaris had by this time again drawn his forces into tighter and tighter defensive lines. By concentrating his defenses, the Rimworld's Republic forces, plus their new regiments, had made the war more difficult the further Kerensky advanced. By the time the conquest of Terra was on the table, it was 2777, and the SLDF was down to 35% of its pre-war forces. Many veterans of the war had been fighting for so long.
Oh. To give an idea, I went on an entire rant early on when we talked about at the beginning of the Civil War, or at least the honest, okay, now it's open and not just a plan behind the scenes aspect of the Civil War. I'm sorry, by the beginning of this video. I was blown away by the fact that they lost 30% of their total effectives. And while they hadn't broken, it was massively demoralizing. Because a normal army in the world right now, 10% loss is the time where you start looking as mutiny. Not just as likely, but as the upshot, because that means they're still going to be in one place to find them in case you want to hold them accountable later. As opposed to running the F away because you just haven't lost, you've got crushed. 10% losses of an entire force is huge. And now they're saying their current existing force is equal to their losses. And they've been restocking, getting more people, and while it's probably not making up the 35% they started down with, they're at 35% total remaining from the 100% of the 75 some percent, or the 70% they start with. Basically, they've lost so many people that the only way you could actually function in this type, applied to a human being in a normal situation, is absolute desperation and probably a lot of drugs and repression and intentional psychosis. Because if you stop to think about this clear-headed, you don't think, you just break down and stop. That is a level of attrition that it's inhuman. The only way you can expect that is it has to be done compartmentalized, so that the places where it's lost are probably lost in such numbers that the people who experience that level of shock can be rotated out. Not so much as dead, but just walking wounded, almost mentally scarred to the point of that their own statistics are including them. And then you just have to consolidate the people who haven't experienced that so that they can at least keep morale up. And by up, I mean able to move forward. And I don't even mean like fight. I mean literally function. There comes a time where you just, that psychologically breaks someone. And those kind of losses, if not managed, would be that amount. Hell, they probably don't even want to tell people just how many people they lost, because that would be, in its own right, worse than losing. You lose a battle before you even fight at that point.
They'd forgotten how the war started. Many had been injured, rotated out of action, and then rejoined their old unit, now merged into the remnants of 5 others. Some veterans bore scars of 10 or more years of hard fighting.
Damn.
Some veterans had fought for over a decade to find their homeworlds burned and their family long dead. For them, there was nothing but
like
duty,
I said,
really.
intentional
They were invested in the outcome
gravity.
of the war just to see it done. Amaris had to be brought to justice. That's all there was to it anymore.
There's no justice coming.
Through all this, they'd remembered their oaths. The Star League was alive so long as they fought. The final liberation of Terra started January 23rd, 2077.
Oh, actual defense network for Terra. Each and every dot is a defense system. Oh, so this is probably well before Amaris then, just because I don't see nearly enough references to a certain corral. Every time he's in there, it's an edited video. It usually has it somewhere. Most of them. There's been a few that I haven't, but most of the time it is. But goddamn, that is actually really impressive that this is the actual display they used. And I'm only assuming it's not just an artistic representation, because text is usually very thorough. So if he's saying this is actually what it looks like, hot damn, that's actually what it looks like. Functionally, though, that is a massive pile of computing necessary. I don't just mean the hologram or all the representations or the in-time representations here. I mean, from a sheer orbital mechanics standpoint, I just want someone to stop and think about what this means. Right now, every single one of these is floating in orbit. They're all moving at, well, escape velocity, but just a little under it. So they're in orbit, which means thousands of miles per hour. I think it's like 30,000, 50,000. I don't actually quite know. It's just one of those ungodly numbers that you don't really realize when you're up there because you're rotating over the planet, so you don't have the perspective of it. But every single one of these is moving at that speed. They're probably moving, if not at the same speed, then close enough that their orbital rotations don't entirely desync. But look at how there's all around it. If you're doing a strict orbit across the equator, that would vary between every single location here. So unless these are all static, and, you know, that's impossible because when you're in orbit, you have to move. Because if you move too slowly, you're either flung out or you're flung in, depending on which side of the gravity well you're on. So you're either pushing yourself in so you don't get flung out, or you're pushing yourself out so you don't get, you know, crushed by gravity and fall to the earth. What you're looking at right here is a monumental amount of coordinated just thruster work to keep in orbit, to keep it moving, and then to move at variable speeds, because the ones here would have to move a lot faster than the ones up here, which might have a more close to geosynchronous orbit. There's so many moving pieces here that a single screw dropped could go through multiple ones of these, because there's so many, it could create debris fields. This is a problem we're already experiencing on Earth right now. So this level of technological development is actually insane, because it would need to account for so much material to survive. If you really want to destroy a planet, you don't shoot it. You just throw junk in orbit and never let them leave the planet again. Because nothing survives a little bit of iron, just tiny compressed bit of it, traveling at, oh my god, this is almost relativistic speeds. Because if you got one, you're going to take damage. If you just drop a handful, it's a lot. If you just did it everywhere, you could destroy this entire orbital facility, because there's a limit to what you can do. You don't even need to shoot, you just throw it in orbit. Again, I mention this because this is a problem we are running into right now in space. There's so much junk that you actually have to dodge around with satellites and with different space stations. It's only going to get worse, and there's so much already that they have to account for so many variables, so many particulate matters, and the variations of where it's at. It's a mind-boggling level of computation necessary to put every single piece in here. I normally wouldn't freak out this much, but because text says this is actually what it looks like, and there's everything on every layer, I thought it would be further out, maybe at Lagrange points, and then coordinated from there. But if it's constant everywhere, and we're using what Battletech usually has is pretty hard science instead of, space magic, or it works because we say so, like Star Trek or Star Wars, I'm assuming this is just a monumental feat, and in its own right, the computation necessary far outstrips anything here. It's just batshit insane, and I'm very impressed.
77, and in itself it took over 2 years of brutal fighting. The road to Terra had been punishing in the extreme. The majority of Kerensky's ground forces were dead, destroyed, disbanded, or lost, and half of his navy was littered between the periphery and the cradle of humanity. What ships they had left were held together largely by the salvaged remains of their sister vessels. Few ships, if any, bore no mark of the war in some major way.
I mean, some did.
The crews, however, were hardened fighters willing to see through to the end. The road to Terra was going to cost them more than they thought.
Oh, shit,
By this
really?
point, as stated, the other houses of the inner sphere saw the writing on the wall and decided to back the general, not the usurper. There were precious resources at last to afford a final operation.
Because they don't need to worry about
military supplies and
way.
refugee assistance poured in from the Capellan Confederation, the Lyran Commonwealth, and the Federated Sons. Not House Kurita, though. Again, a most shameful display.
Why do I have a feeling all of this, because I know, because people have mentioned it, Korea is the first one to take over, or at least put their claim forward in succession. Oh. Text is foreshadowing, which isn't really foreshadowing because this is official lore, it's already out there, that whatever Kurita's about to do, it's going to be dickish. I have a feeling we're about to see why Kerensky leaves. Why the Exodus happens. I know that one of the later videos is the Exodus itself, but I'm assuming whatever decision he reaches is going to be based on something this asshole does. Ah, damn it.
As a historian, I can think to only say this. Kurita has always been kind of a dick.
Yes.
Just saying. Anyways, with such backing, with financial and material assistance, with fresh blood and parts and equipment, Kerensky proceeded toward the endgame. January 23rd, 2777, Kerensky invaded the most heavily defended world in the known galaxy. Pardon me for phrasing it this way, but you don't just walk into Terra. Terra had been reinforced over the centuries to be impossible.
It's an old
to
meme, but it
invade.
checks out.
Only Amaris had ever succeeded in conquering it through generations of preparation by his...
Oh, nothing to say. I'm just... Starships. Oh, sorry. It's even a new design I didn't see before. It looks similar to some of the models I have for the actual starships up there that technically would be around in this time frame, but very, very new. But just look at this thing. Look at it. The best part is you can actually see where this is a spaceship designed for in-atmosphere flight because you could see the air ducts where it would actually collect air and then repurpose it. You don't really have fixed wing structures like this unless you have some significant issues or the designer's an idiot.
Dynastic line. The exploitation of an idiot first lord. Brutal cunning and sheer audacity.
Yep.
Terra had been turned into a jewel of an interstellar empire by the Golden Age and the wealth of Star League, and then reinforced by a government that saw defense spending as a great way to create jobs and create peace of mind. And these...
Okay, that last one, a government that uses defense spending as a way to create jobs, that's not so much a Battletech thing as that's just kind of a thing. A lot of the defense industry is a boon for whatever location is the one funding it, because it's the one place where you send it, you build it, you throw money at it, and you hope to never use it. So it sitting on the shelf doing nothing is a good thing, which is why then it needs to be replaced, so you have to fix it up again. It's a weird dynamic where making a product you never want to use in any other situation is bad, so countries like doing this because they can then basically do stimulus and say, hey, I did this, give money to a location, prop up an entire ecosystem of people who then would support you because like, oh, hey, they helped for something that if they need it, good foresight. But if they don't, Well, we're being cautious, so it's not a waste. It's... Yeah. In Battletech especially, though, you know it's not a waste because war is everywhere.
These weren't just the greatest space defense systems ever made. No.
Look at these ships. Look at
They were
them.
now manned and operated by people who had spent years training for this. They were manned by people who had nothing to lose.
Also, really, they're going with this design. Oh, dear fucking God. For anyone wondering why I'm having a massive, just dear God, why attack right now? One, we got so many cool ships. We got fighters. We had what probably was a bomber because they had the air intake, but the more swept forward wings, where these were more swept back. And you can see these are not intended for planetary descent because they have absolutely no way to maintain it through wing aspects. I've been told these are just one, they look cool. Two, radiated ways to lose heat. But then they have this thing. For anyone wondering why I'm just losing my shit on this, I think it's justified. What you're looking at here is a starfighter, because it's in space, that can go into, well, air. It has more or less wing protrusions, tails for control, and what looks like an extendable option here. The reason it's shit is because this is basically the Airier design. For anyone who doesn't know what the Airier is, it is a plane that can do vertical takeoff. That sounds cool. Functionally, though, it's a death trap that was more or less entirely useless by its own stupid design. It's overly complicated. It breaks on a dime. It's basically a proof of concept that should never have stopped at that stage and should have been scrapped because in practice, it's stupid. It breaks, it kills its pilots, and you're basically looking at anyone who flies that thing is going to die. And I don't mean that in it's going to get shot down. I mean, takeoff and landing will fucking murder you. It is a horrible design, and they did it here. Basically, there's just too many fiddly moving parts. Now, granted, Battletech. Fiddly moving parts is literally a mech's thing. But fuck that, because I'm going to ignore all of that because it's reminding me of something that's an absolute horrible idea, and I'm going to just stick to that.
We're more than willing to go down in a blaze of glory. Let's
like
touch
that
on these obstacles
he's going to go down
before you could even
Maybe,
land on Terra.
If he's lucky,
First
20
issue
fire.
was the space defense systems. These were enormous battle stations guarding the jump points. I'll talk about the KF drive and jump ship someday, but let's just say this. Most, if not all, traffic into a star system comes from the jump points located at the zenith and nadir points of the star.
Nothing to say, just admiring the awesome. We've already seen how big these ships are, and then there's the space station here. Oh. Be still my heart, this is freaking amazing, man. Sorry, starships, space stations, this stuff is just... I love this.
Where you will find the jump stations. Around these jump stations in the Sol system, the Terran wing of the space defense systems had built enormous battle stations ready to beat the brakes off anyone who jumped through. Anyone who's played EVE Online would probably recognize this as the classic old school gate camp, salt harvesting included.
Welcome to Murder Station. Enjoy your stay.
Further in the system, there were enormous batteries and defense systems located on Luna and stations around Terra and on the ground. Further, there was the single most expensive and advanced drone ship system ever built.
Ooh. Which they mentioned earlier.
What's a drone ship? Alright, imagine a warship weighing many thousands of metric tons. Now imagine it's completely...
I mentioned earlier that I had fighters that were in this session. Yeah, these right here. I actually have two of the models right behind me. I'm not sure you can see them because there's custodies blocking them, but yeah, I actually have a few. They're cool. Do I know how to use them? Nope. But they're cool. Seriously, I saw they had freaking actual ships. I was like, I don't care if it's just a fighter. I want that! I have very little self-control when it comes to some things, and these are some of the things I have very little self-control of. Freaking cool, man.
Filled with computers designed to detect and murder intruders. Fill it to the brim with weapons and armor. Then, since it's not filled with meat bags, keep in mind it can maneuver and fly like a goddamn missile. Also, since it's not filled with mouth breathers, it can take a tremendous amount of damage and keep fighting.
Because there's no
Lastly, these were directed and driven by thinking AI that had no compassion, knew no fear, felt no pain, and were willing to do anything to accomplish its objective: protect Terra. There were 250 of these fucking things waiting in the Terran system. They were on...
Wait, only 250? On the one hand. On the other hand... Huh. I'm assuming that's the drone ship. God damn, you can see it's actually... It almost looks like it flew through the explosion of a previous ship. You can see the laser is just not doing shit. These things are probably incredibly hardened. They have the advantage, they said, of the way to interrupt them, but what they're describing right now is absolutely bullshit as far as I'm concerned. And I love every second of it. Sorry, nothing to say, just really
active
impressed.
Patrol, they were ready to respond and instantly set to attack at the first sign of trouble. They were so adept at their job that SLDF scout vessels had to routinely pop in to observe from out in the Oort Cloud to avoid being absolutely murdered by the...
For anyone wondering why I'm going, fuck, let's give you an idea. I knew the jump points were pretty far out. They're standardized. Oort Cloud, though, is really far out. As in, think about the distance between the Earth and the Sun. Now, think about the distance that's roughly equal to pretty close in celestial terms. Light takes maybe a couple, I think it's 8 minutes from the Sun to the Earth. And I'm going to estimate this last part, but to reach the Oort Cloud, light would take a very long time. Actually, just going to look that up right now. I can spell. I cannot spell, apparently. Light to reach Oort Cloud. Aha. Let's see. How long does it take to travel to the Oort Cloud? Oh, well, never mind. They didn't tell me how long light took, but it's... Huh. Oh, never mind. Again, so I got the exact number here. I'm just gonna pull this up on screen quickly. Yeah, it auto searched in Bing. I don't like that, but I'm just going to deal with it at this point. Yeah, this part right here. Photon emitted by the sun will need around 16.5 hours to reach the Oort Cloud. At light speed, you're doing the better part of a day. Freaking speed of light. Voyager 1, 300 years. Voyager 1 is basically the probe that has gone the farthest from Earth and is the biggest achievement, essentially, that humanity has ever done in exploring the cosmos. And it's still about 250, maybe 230 years away from this destination. The Oort Cloud is still part of the solar system. God damn. So when I'm freaking out here, that means these things have an effective range superior to light speed. Maybe not superior to light speed, but just that is probably one of the few times where if someone actually knew this, they probably wouldn't say nearly as much about it, because 250 is a lot. But at that scale, that... I'm just going to say that this is one of the things where the actual math involved here is so astronomically huge that the scale of comprehension is really beyond what a normal person would really think. So while I will usually give a lot of credit to Battletech, this is where I'm going to pull a line and say, maybe not as much, just because 250 is a lot. And saying you can go full power all the way because you don't need to worry about fleshy bodies doesn't really matter, because unless they have achieved a percentage of light speed travel as in more than a percentage, but an actual full number percentage of light speed travel, this is not really functional. I don't know how fast most spaceships are in Battletech, but this is bullshit, and I love it. It also would imply heavily that if they're only jumping in and jumping out, anything closer than that would be destroyed, so their range is just absurd. I love this. I absolutely love it because it's absolutely absurd, and does confirm that their speed is bullshit. Yeah. God, I love this stuff. Okay, so as much as I want to go on, I do need to cut this one here because I'm recording at night, and it is a significantly higher number than I think my wife is okay with me being up talking this loud. Yeah, I really should have thought of that before deciding to record, but this is on me. This is completely on me. I actually have the time, but I would like to have my punishments remain being couched and not needing an attorney. Yeah, let's put it that way. Otherwise, you guys know the deal. I'm going to just start talking quieter now for safety's sake. Otherwise, thanks for watching, everyone. If I don't put up another video, I was wrong. I was still too loud, and that would be bad. Hopefully not. Wish me luck. I will probably need the luck. So yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. Again, links below, original video. And seriously, I'm not even joking. It's a lot later than I realized, and I really shouldn't be talking this loud right now. Oh, I am going to need to give her so many, I don't even know what, seafood? Yeah, probably seafood to make up for this. Yep, cheesy bread and seafood. That's definitely the way to go. I know my wife's takes. This is what it takes to bribe her. I'm doing it. All the same. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.